Ladies and gentlemen, that's an annoying start to the show. Let's try that again. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. It is the Sens Nation podcast, and coming up today, it's all about the Four Nations Faceoff. I think I said in our last episode I wasn't all that interested, and I reserved the right at the time, though, to jack it up a little bit as far as my interest goes. And I've gone from about a 5 out of 10 to about a 8 or 9 out of 10, and it's going to get even more interesting as Canada faces the U.S. on Saturday night. We'll get into that, how Brady Tkachuk's doing in the tournament. Wow, what an opener with his brother, and a whole lot more coming up here on the program. Steve, along with the coach, Greg Kennedy. Greg, how are things?
Things are good, Steve. Welcome on board the bandwagon that is the Four Nations. I always want to say Four Nations Cup, but that's a women's tournament, I think. Welcome on board the bandwagon anyway, Steve. If that first 5 minutes of that Canada-Sweden game didn't get you fired up, I don't know what would. Man, that was exciting. That was right from the get-go. It was a great game.
Yeah, it really was. And that power play, you thought, okay, this power play is going to rock at about 80%. That power play won with the absolute studliness of it. Just a terrific play with Sidney Crosby, sort of that backward pass across the way to Nathan MacKinnon, the East Coast connection. The third man in here on the program, Drake Batherson, was probably feeling a little envious on that, watching his East Coast boys go off in that game. Brad Marchand had a goal as well. But, it cooled off. It almost, to me, and you tell me what you thought of that first game, Canada-Sweden. They end up winning 4-3 in overtime. To me, it looked like Canada was jazzed for the tournament. Sweden, I think, was also jacked for the tournament, but probably on the spectrum of intensity was a little closer to all-star mode at the start. And then as the game went on, their pendulum moved a lot more to we really want to win this thing. And they got better and better as the game went on. How did you think the game went?
I guess the gauge for that is the physicality, right? I thought it was pretty physical. And then I watched the U.S. game with Finland and thought, oh, no, maybe the Canada game wasn't that physical. Maybe those people that were saying it wasn't physical were right. But I thought there was some bodies being thrown around. But you're right. It was much more of a flow skating, trading chances track meet to open than the U.S. Finland game. But it did get physical. It did get serious. Some heat was brewing in there, and it turned into a really good hockey game. I was just really thrilled because I played a fan duel, Steve. It came through. So I had a good night. I had a really good night.
Very good. Very good. How impressive is Nathan MacKinnon? Oh. Like, he's just he see him charging up the ice. What did he have, like 4 solo rushes that he almost scored on in overtime? Like that, I don't know if there's anybody in hockey that I want on my 3-on-3 more than I want Nathan MacKinnon, because it looks like he's either going to deke you out of your jockstrap or, like the running of the bulls, just absolutely plow right through you, because he's a big man on top, big, powerful man on top of being wildly skilled and fast. That's a pretty special hockey player, isn't it?
Yeah, if you ever want to use the word gallops in relation to a human being and not a horse or some sort of an animal, that's Nathan MacKinnon. He just gallops up the ice, gathers speed through the neutral zone. Danny Gallivan would love that, gathering speed. But he's an animal. You're absolutely right. He looks like if he can't go around you, who cares? He'll go through you. In the overtime, though, I thought, whoa, buddy, maybe a pass here or there might have helped. It looked like he was trying to set the all-time record for shots on goal in an overtime there. At one point, he just kept firing shots away. But he's an animal. You got him on one set of 3 guys, and then your next 3 come out. You've got Connor racing up the ice in a totally different manner, totally different skating stride, but same sort of thing. Incredible speed, ability to make plays at that speed. The two of them is a 1-2 punch, like, wow, especially in overtime when you got them shift after shift after shift.
I'd agree with you on, calm down, buddy, and all these solo rushes. If he weren't getting legitimate scoring opportunities at the end of each of these solo efforts. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. One of the big questions, though, 2 big questions, both on the blue line and in goal. What's going on with the defense right now? And you got Shea Theodore got injured in that game, so they had to play with 5 the rest of the way, which might have had an effect as they blew that 3-1 lead, kind of adjusting to new defensive partners, playing on the wrong side, that kind of thing. And Cale Makar missing practice today. So now you're looking at Sanheim coming into the lineup. They're number 7. And I've already forgotten his name, the guy from the Blues that's been kind of
Thomas
called up.
Harley.
Attaboy. Thomas Harley coming in to be the 7th man, and he might have to play if Makar cannot. And that's not ideal. That's 2 really, really valuable defensemen for the Canadians. But let me ask you this. Are you Binnington? Are you on Club Binnington for game 2, or are you all about Aiden Hill?
Talk about a tale of 2 games for the poor guy, right? Like he gave up some softies, didn't he? He looked Forsbergy in there on a couple of them. They seemed to create holes in his body. I thought he should have had at least 2 of them. But then, okay, hey, Benny, it's time to shut it down. And he did, right? When he needed a save from the, after it was tied on, through including overtime, he made the saves when he had to. I think John Cooper's already made it clear that he's the guy. He told him he was going to be the guy and will probably start all 3 games. So I figure you probably stay with him. I think maybe you settle down a little bit. It'll be a totally different game though against the U.S. I think there'll be a lot more net front presence, and that might fire him up even more. Let's face it, this guy's an emotional guy. When he is emotionally in the game, I think he's even more fired up, right? And physically and emotionally involved in the game. I think they'll stick with him, and I'm okay with that decision.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Canada versus the U.S. on Saturday night, and for the first time since he became a pro, I think this would be the first time Ottawa fans will be cheering against their beloved captain. Brady Tkachuk and his brother Matthew were absolute beasts in a 6-1 victory for Team USA over Finland. Like, they did it all, and they got them on a line together, and man, did they create. They were bulls in china shops. They were creating turnovers, causing havoc at the net, just one chance after another. They both finished the night with 2 goals, but probably each could have had, 1 or 2 more on top of that. They were just elite, and that's going to be a problem for Team Canada and Sens fans who will be loath to cheering against their captain.
Yeah, it's the one. It's a secret weapon that the U.S. have. Like, Canada does not have an answer in their roster that fits the mold of what these 2 kids are, right? Like the game that Matthew plays he's more skilled probably than Brady, but still the physicality, the net front presence, the banging into people all over the ice. Then you got Brady, who does all those things better than anyone. They say he's the unicorn, and he really is. There's nobody like him in the NHL. And despite Canada having guys like Hagel and Sorelli and Travis Konecny, I guess to a certain extent, even Brad Marchand is a little shift disturber. They don't really have anybody with the big body presence of Brady who can wreak havoc. And in essence, the U.S. have 2 of them in the 2 brothers. It's going to be difficult, especially with the injuries, as you alluded to, with the blue line for Canada. Don't forget they're also without Pietrangelo, right? He was supposed to be there all along too. So they're going to have their hands full. It's going to be a net front game. This is going to be a blue paint game, I think, on both ends of the ice.
You're getting the vibe that NHL fans would be just as happy to never watch another All-Star game if this is the alternative.
Yeah, like, what are we going to do in those years in between now, right? Like, we're going to have an Olympics, then 2 years later we're going to have a 4 Nations or a World Cup of some sorts, and then what goes on in that year in between? I don't want an All-Star game now. I have no interest in it whatsoever. Wait, really, everybody's interest pretty much waned on it as it was, and it's become more of a corporate schmooze fest than anything else, and there happens to be a hockey game played at the same time. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, what are they going to do next February? It's not an Olympic year. Or is it Olympic? It is an Olympic year. Sorry. But what are they going to do the February after that? It's not an Olympic year. It's not a World Cup year. Wow. What are we going to get stuck with having to watch that year?
Yeah, I mean, you've now got 4 Nations, and I think 4 Nations Cup is, back to your earlier thought, 4 Nations Cup is what it should be called. You'll have a women's version and a men's version. That's kind of what it is. You always have the FA Cup in soccer, for example. Cup would make more sense than Faceoff. Faceoff sounds lesser than, for lack of a better way of describing it, face-off. Yeah, playing the face-off. Sounds like somebody who's not a hockey fan came up with that title. Anyway, should be Four Nations Cup. Then you have the World Cup. Then you have the Olympics. That should cover you 3 out of 4 years. Maybe you're working Four Nations every other year. But I'd be fully okay, and I think most fans would if we never see another NHL All-Star game. Now, what did I want to get to next? It was yes. So the players are clearly embracing this as well. Like when we last had our episode, I did a little round table with you and Graham Nichols asking scale of 1 to 10, what's your interest level? As I said off the top, I was 5, but reserved the right to go to a 9. And I think I'll be at least at a 9 for the Canada-US game on Saturday. And you guys were already all in. But I wondered about the players. Would the players be truly embracing the thing? Well, after the game between the Finns and the Americans, the Tkachuk boys were up there because they were the 1-2 stars of the game, and Brady Tkachuk was asked about Saturday night and left no doubt that this tournament means everything to the boys.
It's going to be the biggest game that I've ever played in my career, so I'm really looking forward to that. And just, there's a big build-up to it. And U.S. versus Canada, it's bigger than just the guys on the ice. It's so many people past, present, and future down the road that it's just so excited for it. So, I think we've been talking about that game especially, and really excited to experience it. And it's going to be a long couple of days until it happens, but the excitement's going to be an all-time high.
There's Senators captain Brady Tkachuk, that clip courtesy of Sportsnet. So we certainly knew the players would embrace this tournament more than they would the All-Star game. That was a slam dunk. But did you think they'd embrace it this much, Greg, where it's the greatest or the biggest game of Brady Tkachuk's, 7-year pro career?
I did, Steve. I expected the players to embrace it exactly as they did and come out and play exactly as they did, mainly because it's that 9-year gap. Now, in 2 years from now or 4 years from now, when the next one comes along, will they still have the same sort of fervor? I don't know. But because it's been so long, because so many guys were making their first – how many guys it was their first ever game representing their country? Like, never mind World Juniors and U18s and all that stuff. There was guys on the ice who never, ever worn a Canada jersey, let alone play at a best-on-best like this. So there was a lot of people that were fired up. And then you got guys like Sid, who just always fired up. Was he 26-0 or something? His last 26 games wearing the Canada jersey, he hasn't lost. He's going to be fired up. You got McKinnon and McDavid, who've been waiting for this forever. Same thing on the U.S. side, right? Brady did play in the World Championships last year, I believe, at the end of this, either last year or the year before. I know he's played in the Worlds at some point, but that's still not the same.
Last year.
Yeah, it's still not the same. So you expect these guys. Yeah, I expected everyone to be fired up. I think every individual player has his own personal reason. Some of them are shared, and my personal reason might be the same as his personal reason, but every guy had at least one reason why I really want to play well. I'm fired up. I want this to be big tonight. And I think everybody's been the same way. The players have clearly the players have bought in. Now, how much of that is political behind the scenes? Do you think maybe Gary Bettman in his negotiations with the PA to give them this event, to say, okay, you can have your best on best, but let's be clear on one thing. If I were Gary Bettman, I would have made this clear. This isn't going to be an all-star game. If you guys are going to play there, you're going to play. There's no dicking around. There's no Kucherov dangling and going 3 miles an hour around the ice. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. You guys better be in it and committed. And I bet that message was loud and clear, both from the NHL and from the head of the NHLPA, in making sure that the players were in and all in.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's to some degree. Now, it's not a USA Hockey or a Hockey Canada involvement in this thing. It's an NHL and an NHLPA event, but they keep an eye on things. And anytime you put the crest on, you put the your country's emblem, logo on your jersey, that's people take notice of that, and they want to see who does great. This is sort of a warm up for the Olympics, obviously, and eyeballs are on this thing, and they want to. If you want to play in the Olympics, it behooves you to have a very good Four Nations tournament. So I think that adds another level to it. Fans took it to the level we kind of expected as far as booing the anthem goes. When Finland's taking on the Americans, kind of a neutral site game, it's in Montreal, and the Canadian fans booed the American anthem. And I think we all agreed in the last episode we didn't have any big issue with it. I think the players can recognize that for what it is, and the world probably does too. Nobody's thinking that they're going, I hate you, Brady Tkachuk brothers, because you're American. That's not how it's being perceived, I think. I would think. However, TSN's Bar Down host, Jesse Pollock, who's built himself a pretty good following online, put a video out where he gave a big old lecture on Canadians being better than that. And I thought I'd play that for you here to see what you think of it.
Guys, I want to talk about the booing that took place during last night's USA vs. Finland game in Montreal. Look, I understand people's frustration with the tariffs. It's completely justified. But as Canadians, I just think that booing the American national anthem is stooping to a really low level for us. We are better than that. This is a tournament that's supposed to unite the best hockey nations in the world, and rather than coming together for it, we're now creating division, and that's not what this tournament is about. Let's be mindful that hockey fans from all over the world are watching this tournament, and when they see Canadian fans booing a national anthem, it's just not a good look. Let's also be mindful that there are a lot of Americans who fight for the flag and who fight for the national anthem, and is really disrespecting them in a lot of ways. Again, I understand the frustration with the tariffs. Canadians have the right to be fuming about it, but this is not the time and place to be booing a national anthem, especially after fans were instructed to not boo during it. Canada, we're better than this. Let's show the world how classy of a nation we are and not boo the American national anthem. Let's take the high road here.
All right, that's Jesse Pollock from TSN's Bar Down. I'll let you have first go at it, Greg.
Well, first of all, they were not instructed not to boo. They were reminded to please be respectful. Okay, difference of opinion on respectful, reminded versus told. But secondly, if this isn't the stage to voice your displeasure, then what is? Right? He says, this isn't the right place for that. Well, what is? Yep. When else is there going to be an opportunity for Canadians to voice their displeasure? The other thing is, they're not booing Team USA. They're booing Donald Trump. Let's get that perfectly clear. And I would think that all of the players are aware of that. They know that it's a political statement being made by the fans. The only person booed that wasn't Donald Trump was Austin Matthews. That was clearly directed at Austin Matthews, and not Austin Matthews American, right? It wasn't. They weren't booing Austin Matthews of Team USA. They were booing Austin Matthews because he's the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the game's in Toronto. The same way that they would have booed if the Americans had, if Canada had an American captain. You don't think he would have got booed in Toronto? The same thing. Yeah. It's silly. They're booing Trump, not the United States of America.
Yeah, there's no stooping going on. We can't stoop to. There's no stooping. I don't know why he's referencing that. One of my Captain Stooping of the Love Boat. So a few things in there I found grating and irritating. For starters, when anybody starts a sentence with the word "look," I find that immediately irritating and condescending as F you. Just when you say "look" at the start of a sentence, it's like you're saying, "Look, I'm the expert here. Let's cut through all the clutter here, and I'm going to get down to the source of it. And you're an idiot. And once I've said what I'm going to say here, everybody can shut up because this is the final word." That's what it sounds like when you come out with, Look, this is the story. I hate it so much, Greg. So that's one he dropped in there as well. I don't know what makes this kid judge and jury of what's appropriate in our nation. How about let people do what they feel like doing? And this whole issue of, like you said off the top, because we're instructed to, we have to, the PA announcer says we've been instructed to, so we better, that makes it worse because we've been instructed. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. But a lot of reaction. That had over 1 million views on X today. So I thought I'd bring that to the table and I just don't know. Again, I feel people have a right to express their opinion. Like you said, is Trump coming by for dinner in Montreal or something? Is he whipping into, Chez Henri or whatever the hot spot is in Montreal? Where I can have a little, I'll buy you a beer and we can talk this out and I'll let you know how disgruntled I am about this tariff situation. It's an international event. A lot of eyeballs on this thing, and Canada has an opportunity to tell Donald Trump what they think of him. And that's what that entirely was about, not about ripping a bunch of 27-year-old hockey players. So that's all I have to say about that.
I can remember as a young man, like a young boy, one of the first hockey games I ever attended live was the Boston Bruins at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. This would be like 72 or 71, maybe even. And Bobby Orr was booed by the Maple Leafs fans. That was wrong. I'm sorry, but that's wrong. Yes, you pay your money. You can react as you like, but this is Bobby Orr. You don't boo Bobby Orr. I'm sorry. This one's different.
I love Bobby
You can
Orr.
boo the U.S. national anthem. You're booing Donald Trump, no problem. But that would be like booing Gretzky, right? To put it in perspective, that'd be the same as some fan base booing Gretzky somewhere.
Well, wouldn't you argue that if it was Wayne Gretzky and not Mario Lemieux who came out in Montreal in the pregame ceremony, that he might have heard a little bit of something, given that he was at Trump's election night party? And
he is a Trumper.
Anyway, I don't want to turn this political, but yeah, and so is Bobby Orr now that you mention it. So
Orr's a Trumper too. So is Jack Nicklaus, for God's sake.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want the show to get political. It's all good. But the last thing on Four Nations before we move on to some other things is the math of it all. So what happens if this happens? And I think the only thing that's conclusive is if America wins in regulation on Saturday night, they're automatically in the final.
Ready for the big game? Your home should be too. With Celebrate Lights, you can show your team spirit and light up every victory. Sync your lights to your team's colors and let the whole neighborhood know when they score. Match your team's colors, celebrate every win, and take the excitement to the next level. Celebrate permanent holiday lighting, the easiest way to set the stage for unforgettable moments.
A couple of other things before we wrap up the program. Angus Crookshank, kind of in the news because Belleville head coach David Bell, as the B-Sens, played a game in Ottawa on Wednesday night. He was asked about Angus Crookshank. Remember that guy? He played 12 games for the Ottawa Senators last year, and he ended up getting dinged up in a game, I want to say in late March, early April, in a game in Minnesota. And he played, like I say, 12, 13 games for the Sens, and that ended his season. But going into that offseason, things were looking very rosy for Angus Crookshank. But then everything completely changed. You had a Jacques Martin who was giving him ice time on a line with Claude Giroux and Tim Stützle. And that was the kind of faith that he had in the kid. He didn't stay there for more than a couple of games, but he scored, and he was a good energy guy. He dropped down in the lineup, and he was a good energy guy down there as well. But you go from Jacques Martin to a brand new coaching staff that now you have to win them over. And then you think about the changes that Steve Staios made to the bottom half of that forward roster. It was just like a capsizing of the boat for Angus Crookshank, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, right? Still probably an undersized guy, right? Like you didn't mention it, but all those off-season signings had an incredible effect on him. If he's a guy you're thinking that might play in your bottom six, well, he's kind of more of a Gaudette type, right? He's not a bottom six grinder. He's not a dump and chase guy. He's an offensive producer. So he pretty much has to play. Worst case, he's got to play at least on your third line or there's really not a spot for him. And the Senators did nothing but in the off season but add guys that do that job. So he kind of got passed over by a lot of people and hasn't even gotten a call up this year. That's probably a bit of a surprise, I think. But you got to feel sorry for the guy. He works his butt off and just can't quite get here.
Yeah, way better skater than Gaudette. But you think about the free agent signings, and we'll put David Perron in there as well because he's kind of a tweener between the top six and bottom six. So, but all these guys end up pushing down the bottom of the forward roster. So you have David Perron, you have Michael Amadio, you have Noah Gregor, you have Adam Gaudette, you have Nick Cousins. Like that's a lot unto itself. And then you've got a new philosophy of a new coaching staff. And Steve Staios, I think, declared at the draft that he kind of favors bigger guys too, if possible, particularly on defense, based on what he did with Tkachuk and Gabriel Eliasson in the 1-2 spots. So then you see guys that Crookshank outplayed last year effectively, or at least if you base it on number of games played in Ottawa. He had more games in Ottawa last year than other Belleville teammates like Zach Ostapchuk, like Matthew Highmore, and who's the third guy that I had in that discussion? And Jan Yannick, who just arrived in Ottawa. So he's a little different, but he's played a game in Ottawa this year. So just one guy after another that for various reasons have passed him on the depth chart. But he does have, Angus Crookshank, does have an ace in his sleeve. Ace in the hole, whatever you want to say, whatever cliche you want as far as aces go. And that's the fact that David Bell is very clearly a big fan of Angus Crookshank. So listen to this comment that Bell had leading up to the Wednesday game at the CTC on TSN 1200 mornings this week.
He's grown his game. He's, you know what, before it was probably a deficiency defensively. He kills penalties for us now. He plays center for us sometimes now. He's playing right wing now with Reinhardt down here. So he plays all three positions. He's on at the end of the game. He's consciously rounded out his game to be more reliable defensively and more reliable on walls. So, you know what, it's just one of those things where it stinks. You just got to wait your turn and continue to, if he continues to put numbers up down here, and again, led our team 2 years in a row in scoring, he's probably going to do it again. At some point he's going to get his crack, and he's probably the hungriest player I've coached ever to have the drive to get to the National Hockey League. So when you got that drive, he'll get there. He'll get there at some point.
Well, and I'll tell you this interview might get back to him, because I remember I used to talk to Troy Mann quite a bit and do interviews. And then when we were talking about prospects, sometimes he'd tell me the next week, well, I heard from Angus because they didn't bring his name up. Last week.
He is so motivated.
He wants it so bad.
Oh, it's amazing how you know what, you love telling a guy that he's getting called up and going in and pulling a guy out of the room, but the worst part of it is you got to walk by Angus and he's looking at you and you don't stop at his stall and the head goes down, and it's a tough one. But you're happy for the other guy, but poor Angus, I hate walking past him.
So there's David Bell, big fan of Angus Crookshank, that clip courtesy of TSN 1200. And that's meaningful, like to have your American Hockey League head coach, even though everybody's not a huge fan in the NHL, maybe he'll still get a shot, but this is a UFA, and at least you've got David Bell, who is going to make a couple of phone calls for Angus Crookshank's next contract, wherever that may be.
Right, and that's nice. As a player, what more could you ask for than a coach who's going to talk about you like that, and he's in your corner? It's just, I don't know. You mentioned all those players, and also Reinhardt too is another one, right? Just too many guys ahead of him, and you wonder if maybe his time in Ottawa is done, and he ends up going somewhere else in the offseason, some one way, shape, or form, to get out of here and get a chance somewhere else.
Yeah. To close it out today, I shared a clip on X this week on social media from actor Jeff Daniels. Dumb and Dumber fame, been a ton of different things. Overrated. You know what? You and I both love a good Western. I don't know if you saw this. It's about, I want to say 7 or 8 years old now, and it was called Godless. It features Jeff Daniels as the bad guy, and the lead actress from Downton Abbey as the female lead in it. It is really, really good. It's a mini series on Netflix, and I highly recommend it. You and I like to share our TV binges and stuff. So if you haven't seen Godless, Greg, you got to see it.
I'll get on it. It's on my list. But Jeff Daniels, big time, long time Detroit Red Wing fan. Jeff Daniels.
Yeah, I think he does all the voice work for the Michigan tourism as well.
Okay.
He was one of the rare Hollywood successes who didn't move to Hollywood. And he decided he and his wife would continue as a working actor, but he wanted to give his kids a fairly normal upbringing, which is tough in Hollywood. So they grew up in Michigan, and hockey was a big part of their lives. And they did a lot of the travel hockey, as so many Canadians do. So the video is from a YouTube channel called The Off Camera Show, and it was a one-on-one interview. And Jeff Daniels, it's kind of annoying how talented this guy is. Actually a really good guitar player and singer. Who knew? And he's funny. He can be dramatic as well. But he talked about the minor hockey experience. And honestly, I wish that someone had shared this with me when I was first a minor hockey dad. And I was shocked at the amount of like that. I don't know if I've ever put anything out on social media in the last 15 years that has gotten that many views, like well over 1 million views. And this is Jeff Daniels talking about being a minor hockey parent.
12 years of driving to this rink and driving to that rink. And good news, we have a tournament in Buffalo this weekend. But the time you spend in the car driving 2 hours to the rink for that 8 a.m. game, and the time you spend driving back, that's why you do it. And you talk to them about anything other than hockey. If they want to talk about the game, okay. But it was never about, you got to get that slap shot working, because if you want to be at a D1 school, and I know you're only 10, but you've got to start getting to work. We were never that. And I think that our time spent with the kids in those car rides, not talking about hockey, paved the way for the closeness we have as a family in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
That was more important, Sam, than any career success I might have had.
So there's actor Jeff Daniels talking about being a minor hockey dad. And let me get your opinion of that thought first.
It's wonderful. Like that, it like my kids only ever played rec level, so I didn't get those long car rides, right? It was a 10-minute drive to the local rink. But he's absolutely right. You've heard many people talk about it before. The car time is important time to talk about anything but hockey. It was wonderful. The music in the background. Steve, I was about to reach for a Kleenex if that thing had gone on much longer.
I feel a couple of things, like, because I've been through it now. My daughter played competitive hockey, and we traveled absurdly long hours usually to Toronto, but soccer was the same thing. We went down to Philadelphia one time. It was just, sometimes I'm driving it, I'm going, what am I doing here? And so I agree with it. And there were a lot of quality conversations, but maybe not as many as I would have liked, because two things do get in the way. You do end up talking a little bit of sports, and I wish I hadn't talked as much about it as I did. And then the other thing is how much of that time I let slip away because of screen time or listening to a podcast on the radio. What should have happened there, if I could do it over again, would be screens are banned and radios are off. And even if we're silent, for half an hour at a time, just staring at the window, that's okay. Something will come up and it'll spark a conversation. And so I do feel, while touched by that clip, I do feel a little bit of regret, and I play it here at the end of this program in hopes that that young parents right now who are just getting their kids, and it doesn't even have to be hockey, it can be any sport or any activity that takes you in car rides for long times, hoping that that will be a boost and help them out and having a great relationship with their kids into their adulthood.
Well said, Stephen. Well said.
All right. Let us call it quits there. Happy Valentine's Day. We're recording this on Valentine's Day. Hopefully you're getting a little sweetheart time. Huh? Huh? Yeah, you don't want to talk about that. Hey, honestly, guys.
I'm your Huckleberry.
There you go. You're going to watch Tombstone on Valentine's Day. Why not? Top 10 movie all time, right? Gotta be.
Oh, yeah, baby. Oh, yeah. The guy got robbed of an Oscar. Like, tell me Val Kilmer. He wasn't even nominated. That's an Oscar-worthy role as Best Supporting Actor, Val Kilmer.
Yeah. And that'll be a role that's appreciated forever. I don't know who won that year, but I guarantee nobody's thinking about, well, I shouldn't guarantee because I don't know who it is, but
don't know who it is.
It's one. You know who it is?
No, it's internet homework. That's what it is.
There you go. Internet homework, ladies and gentlemen. Well, happy Valentine's Day and enjoy the next couple of days as we look ahead to the coming week. We've got a couple of guests coming on, both Ottawa Senators. I've got commitments for Noah Gregor. We'll be recording that on Monday, and Drake Batherson recording on Wednesday. So we can look forward to hearing what the boys are thinking about the Four Nations and how they're spending their vacation time, see what's going on with Noah Gregor and his injury as he's on long-term injured reserve. So that's coming up in the coming week here on the program. And in the meantime, we invite you to check out our website. It is always, as always, sensnationhockey.com. And please check out the hockey news, thn.com/Ottawa. We appreciate all your views over there. And Greg, enjoy your day, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.